Something that was very important to William Randolph Hearst was providing his guests with recreation. We can all collectively think of any number of things to occupy our time these days, but 100 years ago, and out in the middle of nowhere, Mr. Hearst wanted to make sure that there was plenty to do. Hearst himself loved outdoor physical activities such as camping, horseback riding, swimming, and tennis. So for his guests here at the castle, he made sure to provide these activities for recreation during the daytime hours. And the emphasis at the ranch was definitely on getting outdoors. He also had a private zoo that his guests could enjoy. It was comprised of about 95 species of exotic animals over the years from all over the world: giraffes, zebra, lions, bears, bison, and an elephant. Most of these animals were eventually donated to other zoos in San Francisco and San Diego. But still, today, the hills around Hearst Castle are roamed by the zoo's descendants of zebra and Barbary sheep. In the evening hours, or when the weather didn't allow for getting outdoors, the billiard room was also a very popular gathering area for many who stayed here at San Simeon. Gretchen Swinnerton, wife of Jimmy Swinnerton, a Hearst cartoonist, remembers they would have dinner, watch the movie, and then they would spend all hours of the evening playing pool. And then they would wake up the next day and they'd do it all over again. This was a very unconventional room for the era. In an American country house, which, by the way, you typically would have found more on the East Coast, not the West Coast, and during the 1930s, a room such as this would have normally been considered an all-male retreat. But here at San Simeon, men and women played together and enjoyed each other's company, which was fairly progressive for the time. We have two types of billiard tables in this room. We've got pocket billiards, and we have carom billiards, which is a game that relies on banking and geometry. Carom billiards is only played with 3 balls, 1 red and 2 white. And if you'd like a wonderful visual demonstration of how this game is played, you could always web search carom billiards Donald Duck. And the first video that should show up is Donald Duck in Math Magic Land. It's really, really good. Mr. Hearst was very thoughtful with his vision of San Simeon, and the attention to detail is noticeable everywhere you look. No surprise then that this gaming room has many gaming themes. One of the oldest tapestries on the hilltop is in this room. A 15th century Franco-Flemish millefleur style tapestry, which means 1,000 flowers. This is called the hunting scene, which indeed depicts the hunt of a stag by men on horseback with hounds and heralds amidst a forest of trees and flowers. And by the tired expressions on these hunters' faces, and the smile on the stag over there, well, I will guess that this deer will live another day. Mr. Hearst truly loved entertaining, and if you were to be a guest here during these social events, you would be constantly surrounded by his art collection, which he also loved very much. I can only imagine the types of conversations that went on in these rooms. Mr. Hearst is said to have been a wonderful conversationalist with knowledge of a great many subjects and a mastery of the English language. While engaged, he would listen intently and respond reflectively. There are many ideas about the type of person William Randolph Hearst was, certainly too many to address in this short presentation. But if you want to know who somebody was, best to ask those who knew them the best. Mr. Hearst's second son, William Randolph Hearst Jr., said this: "The thing I remember most about my father was his boundless mentality. He never saw his life or dreams fenced in by any frontiers. He had an immeasurable, almost infinite belief in himself and America." Charlie Chaplin once said, "Out of all the personalities I've known in my life, Mr. Hearst had made the deepest impression on me. It was the enigma of his personality that fascinated me the most. In worldly values, he was the freest man I have ever known." I think the image we get most often about William Randolph Hearst was of his enormous wealth. But he overspent his wealth his entire life, and in 1937 he was somewhere in the ballpark of $126 million in debt. It could be said that he was always land and asset rich, but often cash poor. It was at this time that his companion Marion Davies stepped in to help him out by selling her real estate and her personal belongings in order to raise $1 million so that Mr. Hearst could avoid bankruptcy. As well as being a very talented movie actor, Marion Davies was also a very savvy businesswoman with money of her own. Marion Davies said this: Whenever I see anybody in trouble, I'll fight like hell to get them out, especially when it is somebody I love very much. Mr. Hearst owned a film production company called Cosmopolitan Productions, and over the years he had several movie studios distribute his films, Paramount, MGM, and Warner Brothers. So naturally, the heads of these studios were guests here frequently. Powerful movie moguls, such as Louis B. Mayer, Samuel Goldwyn, and Jack Warner. There were also movie producers and directors like MGM's Boy Wonder, Irving Thalberg, and his wife, the very famous actress Norma Shearer, as well as Cecil B. DeMille, King Vidor, George Hill, and Howard Hawks, and the list goes on. Often, the movie chosen for the evening would be a film starring Marion Davies, or possibly one of the other many famous guests he had staying here on that particular weekend. But when it came time for the nightly movie, guests would walk through this door, and they would pass this keyboard, which was used in Hearst's time to ring the 36 carillon bells in the bell towers that loom 137 feet above Casa Grande. The movie theater is the largest room in the house. It is approximately 2,800 square feet, and it seats 50 quite comfortably. A typical evening in this room would be an animated cartoon, a feature film, and a newsreel. And Mr. Hearst owned it all. The actor Iron Eyes Cody once said, "In his castle, Hearst stayed aloof from the troubles of the world, yet seemed to love contact with all varieties of people. He lived in fantasy like most of us, but in his case, he never had to cough up the price of admission because he owned the movie and the theater." Once asked, "Is there any money in Hollywood?" Hearst replied, "Yes, a lot of my money is in Hollywood." The original movie screen was capable of being lowered down into the basement to allow for a theater production up there, again, with all the very talented actors, writers, producers, and directors as guests. Often impromptu performances would occur here on any given night. And no Hearst and Hollywood discussion would be complete without talking a little bit about the film Citizen Kane, a film considered by many to be one of the greatest films ever made. And one of the questions I get most concerning Citizen Kane is it about William Randolph Hearst? Well, the answer to that question is partly. The fact is, Citizen Kane is a fictional story with fictional characters, and the inspiration behind these characters, particularly Charles Foster Kane, is made up of many sources, William Randolph Hearst being one of them. However, it is true that Mr. Hearst was not a fan of the film. He always said that he never saw it. And he definitely prohibited the mention of the film of any kind in any of his newspapers, which very well may have contributed to the film not doing quite as well as it otherwise might have at the 1942 Academy Awards. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards that year, and it only won in one category, Best Screenplay, which was co-written by Herman Mankiewicz, who was a guest here, and Orson Welles, who never was. All in all, Citizen Kane is a fine, classic American film, which I highly recommend watching, with definite references to William Randolph Hearst, but is in no way a biography about William Randolph Hearst, his life, or the people in it. Quite remarkable, though, is that Orson Welles produced, co-wrote, directed, and starred in what was his first feature film at the age of 25. Some said what Hearst disliked the most about the film was its negative portrayal of Kane's second wife, whom many assumed was based on Marion Davies. But Marion Davies later said this about Orson Welles: "I had no anger toward Orson Welles. After all, everybody is created to do their very best, and he probably thought that was his way to make money. Who was I to say I didn't like the way he did his picture? I was not built that way. I liked to keep the waters calm." And Orson Welles himself wrote the foreword in Marion Davies' posthumously published memoir, The Times We Had. And in it, he said this in reference to Citizen Kane and his depiction of Susan Alexander Kane's likeness to Marion Davies: "Comparisons are not invariably odious, but they are often misleading. There are parallels, but these can be just as misleading as comparisons. I rejoice in this opportunity to record something which today is all but forgotten, except for those lucky enough to have seen a few of her pictures. Marion Davies was one of the most delightfully accomplished comedians in the whole history of the screen. She was also a delightful and very considerable person. You know, folks, at the end of the day, Hearst Castle is not just an accredited art museum filled with paintings, sculptures, tapestries, and antique furniture. It is a collection of people, life experiences, and many memories that live on to this day. Stories told in their own words by those who lived and visited here. And these video presentations are very nice, but the one element missing that makes every tour different and organic is your enthusiastic participation and wonderful questions. We miss that, and we miss you. There are so many more stories to tell, and we have barely just scratched the surface, so we will be waiting for you here when all is safe to have you come visit us again. But until that day comes, thank you all so very much for your interest. Please, everybody, protect your neighbors and yourself, and we hope to see you sooner than later.